Welcome to the Female Stoic podcast. My name is Stephanie Poppins, and I am an advocate for literary empowerment. That means I believe the examples set by the literary masters can broaden our life perspective, create increased self-awareness, and empower us to overcome the obstacles we encounter here in the 21st century. By listening and referring what we hear to Stoic philosophy, we can foster a strong sense of self and navigate the world more effectively. This podcast takes the form of both discussions and meditations. And if you like what you hear, you might consider looking me up on my socials, where I post empowering videos every day. Or you may like my classic audiobooks and original stories available on my website, newworldbooks.uk. Happy listening. And hello and welcome to today's episode number 41 of the Female Stoic podcast. And today's episode is entitled The Power of Choice with C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis said, "You cannot go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." What a fantastic quote. So as you know, each week I have a question sent to me, and this week a question on an email I had regarding choices and predetermination of destiny according to our social environment, financial limitation and so on. And I thought this very apt for this topic, as not just were the Pevensie children in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe compromise when they were sent during the war from London into an environment where we now know was detrimental to the well-being of many children of the time. I can also relate this to myself, as I myself came from what may be determined a compromised background. My father was Australian and he got a scholarship from Bletchley Park, the principal centre of Allied code breaking during the Second World War. Obviously this was post-war, this was in the 1960s. But if you don't know anything about Bletchley Park, it was responsible for regularly decoding the secret communications, the German Enigma and the Lorenz ciphers. So he was a clever man. We had wealthy intellectual friends, family friends of our parents, not as children, but we were the token poor family. My mother was a homemaker and eventually took an open university degree and became a nurse. But when we were small, we lived in one of the worst council estates in the country, in the UK. Now, I'll relate this to the theme of the day, which is the power of choice, and it's all about the choices we make with the limitations we have. So I consider myself very lucky in so much that our house sat right on the edge of the council estate and it bordered the country. And so we were surrounded by rolling fields and the countryside. And this is where we spent our time, myself and my two brothers, away from the deprivation, sexual exploitation, physical abuse, mental illness, food scarcity, scarcity of electricity, and at times basic utilities, lack of clothing, etc. Everything that's synonymous with such a deprived estate. So we had first-hand experience by lacking very many of the benefits that the children we came into contact with through our associations with our parents' friends, compared to them, we had nothing. So where am I going with this? Well, again, today's episode is about choice, and it is our determination of me and my brothers, that was a choice. It was very difficult. It was very challenging, but we had a choice. Do we complain, or do we, with childlike enthusiasm, muddle through it all? And that is what we did. Now, you may say that certain moral predispositions like empathy, a sense of fairness, may be rooted in our biology and evolutionary history, and there's nothing we can do about that. We might benefit from that, or we might be compromised because of that. As we know, DNA has memory, and this refers to the biological inheritance of epigenetic modifications, memories, experiences, and so on across generations. So the plus side of this is that we may obtain good, strong, powerful reinforcement of our identity, and therefore a predisposition to be determined. But you may also say that the environmental trauma, the experience of our parents that they had as post-war boomers, that may in fact have altered that gene expression in the sperm and eggs that made up who we are, that may well have influenced their descendants, us. So who knows what predispositions we had, what any of us have. We have to work with what we have. And I would argue that there's maybe trauma that we experience firsthand, but that is not passed through DNA, and that can be just as influential, if not more. So we are set up with predispositions, yes, genetically, but it is our choice how we work with those, how we embrace those, how we use those, in order to be able to cope and survive the situation we are in. And going back to the question of the day, can we recover this? Can we break the mould, as it were? Can we choose our path? Well, I would answer yes. That's the obvious answer. The more complicated one is yes, but how do we do that? And that is what we are seeking to address today. We are taking inspiration from the literary master that is C.S. Lewis. I've chosen him. He's not a female, but I believe that The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is such an iconic story, one that everyone will know, so it's the perfect literary masterpiece to relate to the question of choice. And as I always say, if you are interested in classic audiobooks or original audio drama, please check out my audiobooks wherever you listen to audiobooks. And a quick mention of two new courses coming up in Insight Timer, a working week Stoic reflection 5-day journaling course, and Stoic lessons with the literary masters. 2 new courses you might consider taking if you have time. So let's have a look at The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. If you don't know the story, it follows 4 siblings, Peter, Susan, Edmund and Lucy Pevensie, who discover a magical portal to Narnia in a wardrobe during World War II. So they are sent away from their home environment to something that's alien to them. They are called upon to help the lion Aslan defeat an evil white witch who holds the land of Narnia in eternal winter. They eventually fulfill the prophecy and become rulers of the land. So most of this novel is set in Narnia. It's a land of talking animals, mythical creatures, and it is juxtaposed with their day-to-day experience in a house, an old country house in England that they've been sent to following their wartime evacuation. So the youngest character, Lucy, is the first to visit Narnia. She goes through the wardrobe in the spare room, and then her siblings are with her on her third visit. So why The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe? How do we link that to the power of choice, the power of determination to choose? Because choice is a conscious move. It's something we have to elect to do. We have to make a point of doing every day, not just in those times when we are called to action. So this story is emphasizing accountability, the long-term consequences of actions. It's showcasing individuals who have the power to change their destiny through the decisions they make. And relating that to our lives, you can see we too have the power to change our destiny through the decisions we make, the choices we make, no matter where we started from. Hence me referring to my childhood. So let's analyse the power of choice in this novel. We've got Edmund's choice. Edmund Pevensie's journey is a profound study of moral choice. He's enticed by the White Witch's enchanted Turkish delight, which limits his moral reasoning. His decision to continue consuming it, to crave more and betray his siblings in the quest for more, is presented as a personal choice rather than pure compulsion. And it is a choice. It's an active choice. Now, he's a child, but he still has the power of choice available to him. He chooses then to betray his siblings, to pursue his own pride, ego, and desire for power, to become a king over his siblings. And this, of course, drives him into the witch's service. Then you have Mr. Tumnus, who faces a stark choice between the law of the witch and the demands of conscience. He is commissioned to capture the children, the sons of Adam and the daughters of Eve. But despite the danger he faces from the evil White Witch, he chooses to break the law and save the youngest child, Lucy. He acts with integrity despite the immediate danger of horrible death. Now, of course, C.S. Lewis has set, and this is why I love the story so much, has set a restricted number of characters up to each travel through a moral journey, and he has not overladen the book with characters. He's kept every character's journey clearly identifiable so that we can then see the analogy, so that it's clear for even children to understand the difference between good choices and choices that are going to compromise their higher self, which is where it ties in with Stoicism, because of course, as we know, with the Stoic dichotomy of control, it's all about protecting the higher self. It's all about determining what are externals, things that we can't control, and what we have the power over. And one of the central tenets of this book, one of the core messages in this book is we have a choice. We have the power over our choices. So again, Tumnus chooses to act with integrity, which obviously is in juxtaposition with the character of Edmund. And we need to have clearly identifiable characters in order to contrast and so highlight failings. Now you might say, well, this is too didactic for me. I don't want to be preached to through a novel. But this is another reason why I love The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, because in fact it's a magical journey. So there is quite a strong Stoic and Christian thread running through the novel, but essentially it's about how we face dilemmas as children and how we choose as we mature to understand the difference between protecting our higher self or in fact leaving ourselves exposed to externals and therefore vibrating at a much lower level, not honouring who we are. The other Pevensie children are challenged, consistently tasked, obviously, with choosing how to respond to the reality of Narnia and also how to respond to each other. This is another reason I love the novel, because of the sibling rivalry, the complex interplay between characters, the demands, and the fact that they've known each other all their lives. So they have predispositions to behave in certain ways around each other according to what birth order they're in, what sex they are, and so on. The children are all forced to embrace their roles as rulers and leaders. They are all forced to choose to take responsibility for others' lives rather than their own. When I say forced, they are thrown into a situation and it really is sink or swim. So the choice Lucy makes right from the beginning, even though she's the youngest child and so deemed immature or incapable of knowing her own mind, she has the biggest choice because she is the one that makes the discovery, and she has to choose to hold to the truth of Narnia despite being ridiculed and doubted by her siblings. And of course we have the most beautiful character of them all, Aslan. And Aslan is a lion. Aslan, the word means lion in Turkish. And he operates within a framework of choices that predate the witch's power. And ultimately he makes the choice of self-sacrifice, giving a nod here, of course, to the Christian theme. And he chooses to submit to the witch's demand, offering himself as a willing victim to satisfy the deeper magic, it is called in this novel. It is a spiritual entity, a spiritual truth that again runs throughout the novel. And he has to satisfy this in order to save Edmund. And of course, because he does this and he is guiltless, he has committed no wrong, this allows him to be resurrected. So this narrative is challenging readers and characters to make a decision about the nature of good and evil, is to make a decision about the choices they are going to make, specifically regarding Aslan, who is in himself a bit of an enigma. He's not a safe character necessarily. He's a fierce lion, but they know inherently that he is good. So one of the Stoic themes, one of the interesting Stoic moments in this story is when the professor, the owner of the old country house they've been sent to, advises the children to apply logic to choose between believing Lucy is telling the truth and believing that she is mad or she is lying. He is saying to them, I understand, right from the beginning, I understand that you are coming to this conversation from a place of sibling dynamics, but you have to detach yourself from those externals. You have to detach yourself from those, and you have to just look at the facts. You have a choice to think logically, to look at the facts and remove yourself from the emotional equation. Peter is another character who demonstrates this stoic duty to protect his siblings. He shows courage when forced to kill the wolf to save Susan. He is an older character, but he still, in some places, he still demonstrates the fact that he's still a child and he still has a journey and a path to travel. So each of the characters is challenged in some way. And then they come to understand through Edmund's poor choices that they need to make a choice how to react to their siblings' behaviour. Obviously, he's making the wrong choices. And they're full of fear. It's a frightening time because there is somebody they love that's also putting them all in danger. So at that point, they have to say to themselves, how are we going to deal with this? And how are we going to deal with it in such a way that we get Edmund back on side? Because there's a lot at stake here. Their initial journey from fear and skepticism to becoming these leaders is what the book is all about. The hero's journey. And the hero's journey is littered with choices. So that is the strength of this book. And we come to see over time the internal transformation each character has, especially Edmund, who starts off as very self-centered, and then he understands as time goes on there is so much at stake, and in fact he must change the choices he makes to honour himself. And it's not just his environment and his siblings he's betraying, but he's also betraying his higher self. He is called to choose loyalty and righteousness over temptation. And this, of course, aligns with the Stoic idea that moral virtue is the only true good. So they are called to eventually act out of duty and mercy rather than being reactive to the situation. When they are attacked, instead of reacting, they strategize. And this is why they are given the positions in Narnia they are. If we relate this to Stoicism, a quote from Epictetus, "Some things are in our control while others are not. We control our opinion, choice, desire, aversion, everything of our own doing." And this is what Edmund has to come to realise. He believes that he has control over other things that are going on around him, and in fact he can use them to further his cause and make himself king. But of course that is not the case, and he learns a very hard lesson. So going back to the question of the day and the choice that we have and the situation we find ourselves in at the beginning of our life, be it compromised many times, understanding that we might inherit by default traits that might not be advantageous for survival. We might inherit financial situations where we are compromised, and it is harder for us to begin. We can still learn moral codes and values from the people around us. We can still cherry pick moments, experiences, character traits of those we come across and choose to adopt those, regardless of our DNA, regardless of our status, if you like, in the world. So yes, cultural norms and traditions play a significant role. Yes. Also our personal experiences, successes, failures, encounters with different people and situations. Yes. But I would argue as a Stoic, morality is based on reason and our capacity for moral judgment, regardless. Using our critical thinking skills, analysing moral dilemmas, and developing our own moral compass. This can be learned, this can be practiced, and that's what we do each week on the Female Stoic podcast. We tap into the dichotomy of control, we give a nod to our higher self, and we say, I choose to remember who I am, who my higher self is, and I choose to honour that person every day. As we know, we cannot control external circumstances. We cannot control the hand that we've been dealt. But if we choose to pursue virtue, wisdom, courage, temperance, justice, this will help us make virtuous choices which in turn protect our inner peace and keep the walls of our inner citadel high. We can choose to come to Stoicism, and as I said before and I will say again, I am not a believer in keeping both feet very firmly in only one camp. I believe that's foolish. I believe that is setting ourselves up for disaster. But I do believe that Stoicism is a pragmatic, practical approach to survival, to navigating life, and succeeding by using the framework and the tools that we are given from the Stoic philosophers. So just to end today, the journal task is about the choices we make. In your journal, I would like you to list the choices you made today. I chose to get up at whichever time. I chose to. The sentences should begin with the phrase I chose to, so that you are becoming aware of who you are. You are gaining inner knowledge. And when you then go back to look at that and reflect on that, it will give you an insight actually into what you are doing, the choices you are making every day, and of course call you to action if any of those need to be adapted. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Hey, Stephanie here. Thank you for listening to the Female Stoic podcast. It is an honour, and I just want to say I really appreciate you being here. It's amazing the power of women in literature and the Stoic messages they have to share. Please, if you can, return the favour by spreading their words and sharing this podcast far and wide, so more of us can benefit from their wisdom. And don't forget to leave a review if you like what you heard. See you next time.